Hey Diamond, how's it going?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Creative Dominion podcast with your host Diamond D Money 1996. Got a special guest episode for you all this evening. Got Miss Diamond. I'm out of North Carolina, and so go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, y'all. Thank you so much for having me. I am Diamond again from North Carolina, and basically, I'm just glad to be here.
Awesome, awesome. And so we'll kind of get into it. Like I said, this episode is more about outlining um, the outskirts of an individual that has noticed the psychology of women when it comes to different traumas and domestic violence issues. And so, Diamond, why don't you tell us a little bit about, you know, your story as regards to what you've seen when you've been experienced with taking care of these women.
So, I've actually had the ability to work in the jail system for about 8 years, and which puts me in a situation where I run across women that have experienced physical abuse, some for a very long time. But what I have definitely noticed is a lot of times when these women came into the facility, normally um, they've either there because of something they didn't do or because they weren't, told to do something that they didn't do. And I always ran into a situation where the men were very manipulative. Normally whoever this male is, he may be like a public figure in the community that you would never think is the person that this female is describing. And a lot of times the female is somebody that people really didn't even know who she was. She may have been like, the background of this man, this public figure, to where, she's probably, most cases been abused for a very long time. And normally something erupts in the household to where, they can't contain it or he's not able to hide it anymore. And she ends up in trouble because of the fact that he's a public figure. When law enforcement gets involved in it, they normally don't take him. It'll be the female, you know. And if there's kids involved, the kids you may get dispersed out to family, or the kids end up in the system, um, to where who knows where they may end up at. Yeah.
So awesome and awesome. So in society, we often see, you know, class and status play a major role when it comes to criminal activity or any kind of um, publicized figure, whether it be politics, whether it be, different members of the social status. It could be co-workers, up the corporate ladder. It could be different community members, church members, things of that nature. And so, if you're viewing out there, I know Shannon Sharp, he has a podcast called Club Shay Shay. I know he had a very infamous interview with Cat Williams and just recently Monique. One of the things I was actually watching that, and one of the things Monique was talking about was when Tyler Perry and Oprah, you kind of, spread rumors and lies about how she's difficult to work with, and that cost her family tens of millions of dollars because it disallowed people and companies associated with Tyler Perry's, name and brand to not want to, cast her in certain roles. And
Hmm.
so that had a direct impact. And so what I want to talk about on the podcast today is a social issue that I think plagues society as a whole, and that is the class system and the mentality behind, um, certain net worth. They always, one quote that I've always heard when I was, higher up in marketing businesses was, your net worth is determined by your network. And that
Hmm.
just means that, the people that you know are a direct reflection of yourself. And so, another quote is, you are the average of the five people that you hang around with the most.
Mhm.
And if it's your first time viewing, I'd encourage you to go view some of my other series. I do have a childhood trauma series as well as a Decree Dominion Uncut series, where I specifically interview direct domestic violence survivors and kind of uh, tell the story of how they went through their situation. And so, one of the quotes I always say, it's a quote by Colin Cowherd. He is a sports broadcaster. I am in big to sports. I know the Super Bowl's tomorrow. So, um,
Mhm. Mhm.
like Chiefs to the 49ers, congratulations on making it thus far. Hope it'll be a good game. But one of the quotes that Colin has said, it's actually a couple years ago, he was just talking about sports, and I just, kept it and let it resonate with me. And it's, you take someone's worst moment and you take their best moment, you cancel them out, and everything in between is who they are as a person. And so that can be said in many facets of life. Again, you take, um, let's look at just relationships. Um, Look at your significant other if you're viewing. I want you to really take a look in the mirror. I always challenge my viewers to, as they're listening, to put yourself in the certain situations in the own reflection of your own life, and
Mhm.
look at your significant other and think, what's the worst day I've had with them? What's the worst thing they've done to me? What's the worst way they treated at me? Also, on the flip side of that, or the mirror side of that, look at, what's the best thing they've done for you? What's the best day you've had with them? What's the best moment you've had with them? Cancel those out. So omit those two. And every day that you spent with them in between, every moment, every thing they've done for you or for against you, that is who they are as a person. And so, one of the questions I have for you, Diamond, is that um, in your personal life, in your personal experience, how do you think different, I know, and especially in the Black community, um, and just the community in general, what do you think, in your opinion, contributes to how the class system is associated?
Oh man, I'm going back to the Monique thing really quick. Um, I think that Monique is in that specific situation. I think she is being triggered to kind of get to a certain class. She spoke a lot about Tyler Perry and Oprah. They're not in her class. And between Cat Williams and Monique, I think they're both kind of like at wits end as far as trying to get there. Like we're gonna go for the greatest of the greats and bring them down to our level, or force them to bring us up to their level by talking about what they owe us. And but going back to what you said, I think relationships and I'm sorry, repeat the question again. I kind of got thrown off.
Oh, just in your opinion, what do you think that, um, what in your opinion contributes most to the class system, and what have you seen maybe in your personal life, or what is one example you see where a higher class is maybe, downplayed something from like a lower class, especially in the Black community?
Hmm. Well, I guess the most that I can really think about is when it comes to classes where I used to work and where I work now, there's a big difference because people that are at a higher class tend to look at when it comes to women, and I'm gonna speak specifically relationship between men and women. Men of a higher class, when it comes to dealing with a female of a lower class, it's like um we can pick whichever one we want, and whichever one we want we can have. Whereas if you flip that around and the woman is at a higher class and the male is at a lower class, the woman is going to have like slim pickings as far as what kind of man she can deal with that's not at the same level as her. To be honest with you, why it's like that, I don't know, but I do believe that it is like that. A man can just kind of reach down and say, and you know what, now that I think about it, I think that comes back to the theory that a man is supposed to take care of a woman. So the reason why a man can, he can pick a woman that's not in his same economic class is because his idea of being a man, and I'm just speaking in general, but his idea of being a man is because I can deal with any woman at any income, even if she's making significantly less than me, because I'm supposed to be the provider. The idea is I'm the provider. Whereas for a woman in most cases is not going to deal with a man that's not in her same class because she doesn't want to be stuck being a breadwinner. And not because I don't think it's because she thinks any less of him, but because for a woman to be the breadwinner in the household or even in a relationship, it causes a lot more drama than it does for the man because men naturally have an ego. Now, that's my opinion. Don't be too hard on me.
I think that's like I said, I think that opens up a can of worms for a great, debate and conversation. Back in the day, if you go all the way back, you can even go back to the Bible times or with the Salem witch trials. I mean, women had to fight for a lot of rights. Back then, they women couldn't vote. Um, women were told back in the day to, take care of the household only. Take care of the kids. They didn't work, and so um, growing up, back then, you know, like you said, the man was always supposed to be the head of household and head of the as far as breadwinning. The man went to work, um, took care of all the bills, took care of all the financial responsibility of the household. Like I said, worked the jobs, while the woman was told to, stay at home with the kids, clean the house, wash the clothes, cook, um, make sure the house was in order, make sure the kids were behaving in school, things of that nature. And I think just in the 21st century, like I said, I'm only 27 years old, but just in the past, I'll just look at the past 10 years. So since I was 17 and from now, just the past 10 years, we've seen a cataclysmic shift in the uh, reversed roles. Like I said, um, if you go back to the early 1900s, and up to this point, women have gained significant, rights, significant mentality in regards to the breadwinning structure. There's more women in higher leadership roles within corporate America. There's more CEOs that are women. There's more. I think I'm a Chicago Bears fan. I think we just hired the first ever female scout
Hmm.
in Chicago Bears history. I think like last week. They're more into. There's also women's coaching men's basketball at some level. Women are, there's more lawyers that are women. There's more, VPs of companies, more entrepreneurship. I think the entrepreneurship boomed in the early 2000s, and, women are, heading that a lot. And like I said, that's a really good topic, really good debate, because I think, we saw kind of like a cataclysmic shift. And in my opinion, I think there's different levels of mentality when it comes to men. I'll speak on like obviously as a man, I'll speak on just men, and I'll kind of let you speak on the women. But for men, you know, I feel like it separates, I know you have your alphas, your beta, your deltas, sigmas are your very rare ones, but I just think you know, it challenges men more today than it did back then because a lot with, domestic violence, I'll just speak on that in a little bit, was that back then I feel like women had to tolerate a lot more,
Hmm.
um, with the man back then, us as men, you got to think about it. If you're viewing and listening, I want you to just think about money in general, and not even just in relationship. If just think about your parents. Think about being a child. Your parents made all the money. You just went to school, did your homework, and ate. You know, imagine if you wanted to leave home, at age 8 years old. It's, one, it's virtually impossible,
Hmm.
just based on, the laws and, the children, things of that nature. But even if it was legal to leave home at 8 years old, you have no money, you can't get a job, you can't get a house, you can't fend for yourself, can't defend yourself. And so it's similar to, women back in the day, um, women, you had to, I feel like women had to um learn more. You didn't have, unless you read a lot of books as a woman, while you were tending to the house, or unless you were very educated or educated yourself and learned a lot, like I said, women didn't work back then, so you weren't, you didn't get, all the education, in regards of like jobs. You might have graduated high school, but, even if you did graduate college, it was kind of frowned upon back then. You're not, why would I go to college if I'm just gonna, be at home with the kids? So
Right.
a lot of women, you know, allow men to, every man is not perfect. Just human in general, there's good men, there's bad men, good women, bad women. And I just think back then it allowed the men that maybe were less than, mentally, or, was less than, you know, in regards to being a good person, it allowed men to take control of mentally, physically, emotional abuse of women more so than today. Because, like I said, back then, men had all the power in the relationship. You got to think, if we're getting, even if you didn't make a lot of money, you're making all the money. The women has no resources outside of what you're providing. Back then, if a woman wanted to go grocery shopping with the kids, the man, broke her off the money from whatever paycheck. Like, hey, here's $300, for
Mhm.
groceries. It was kind of like being a kid, like your allowance.
Mhm.
Hey, here's, back then, a lot of women didn't even drive. You put the kids on a school bus. Some kids, as they're older, walk to school depending on the distance. Um, So then, it was even more isolation. And back then, women didn't have the education that they do now. You weren't, they weren't entrepreneurs either. So, even if the dad was a successful entrepreneur, was maybe a car salesman, or maybe owned his own business, the man did all that, grunt work, while the woman just stayed at home with the kids. And so, when you look at now, that cataclysmic shift of, hey, the women are going out and getting the college master's degrees, they're
Mhm.
owning the businesses and reading the books, and doing the business talks and business contracts. And now what you have is, you have men that thought they were the alpha male, or the big dog, or the head of the table, but they're getting challenged by the women, because women don't, I feel like in today's society, to find a housewife that just sits at home and doesn't work is a rare thing, you know.
Absolutely. Um, I believe first what you said about being a stay-at-home housewife, I think it is very rare, and I'm a person personally that opposes to that. I don't think that, I think this is 2024, even if it's the beginning of 2024. I believe that in order to live comfortably, it should be two people working in a household and two people taking care of the household. But going back to what you said about history, back in the day, it was exactly that. It was the women, were thought of just how you said it, just staying at home, taking care of the children, while the man did physical labor. And I think that that was the worst thing that they could have done, is allowed a woman to hold on to this type of, you know, household function, to be this place in the household for so long. Because women, when you look at the how women just like you said, I'm a single mother, I have a long lasting career, I own my own home, so to most people I'm doing very well. But what a lot of men don't realize, or a lot of people don't realize, I don't think that women, said, okay, well, we're going to get the right to vote, and we're going to just vote, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Because just like you said, we didn't have the education back then to want to conquer anything. I believe that we were forced. When you start to look at history and you see the women that stayed at home taking care of the children, and the men that did the work, in the workplace, well, these men, while these women were at home working and handing them allowance, they were also out dealing with other women. And eventually, like anybody else, whether you've experienced emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, or anything, you get tired. And You can only go through things only a certain amount of time before you get tired. And I think that these women, when they realize, okay, we're at home taking care of these children, we're handed allowance, which in some cases, the allowance is going to be towards the household or the children. If we face it, back then, women weren't getting their hair and their nails done and getting pedicures. So it was the simple functions of life is what that money was for. So now, now that women have evolved so much, I think men look at it wrong and they think that women are being empowered to be the man, to be the masculine one. I think that we were in a position, many years ago where we had to learn to feel better about ourselves because naturally, when you become a parent and you are a parent, you want your children to be better than you were. You don't want your children to be sitting at home taking care of children, whether it be a male or female. You don't want your children in that type of stressful environment. So, what you do is you want your children to be better. And so you get your degree. You focus on these bigger goals to you just to be better. And unfortunately now women are looked at as too masculine, too strong, oh, that's the biggest one, too independent. Well, we were forced to because at some point in history we couldn't rely on a man.
That's definitely like I said, great topic, great response. Um, like to you saying, and then also with that, just looking on the domestic violence side of things, back then, unless you were out with the kids, women didn't really leave the house. That's one point that if you're listening in that you have to also look at, nowadays, you have social, and also back then we didn't have social media, and you had the dial up house phone. If you go way back, before then, some didn't even have phones, so you had to have money to have a phone. And so um back then, the men, we say, hey, give the little kids a kiss while they're asleep, depending on how early you go into work. Give your wife a kiss on the forehead while she's asleep, and you go in, and you were back when whenever you said you were back home. You, like I said, even when they had the house phones, you had to dial up or the pay phones, and hey, honey, I'm running late. You had to literally call, find a pay phone. Hey, honey, I'm running late from work. I'll be home at 8. Can you have dinner on the table when I get home? So there was no outside communication, outside of being in person, so even if, and that created a fear factor for women as well back then, because let's say you were, as a man, if you were beating on your wife, you know, and your kids, were too young to notice, back then also it was, frowned upon to be in others' business. There was
Yeah.
no
Hmm.
social media. You couldn't, take a selfie and get on TikTok and say, I need help. My man beat me. He's at work. You know, there was no outlet. I mean, there was also, it was a man's world back then. So, if you didn't have any money, you weren't exactly gonna, um, you couldn't, get a hotel and run off with the kids. Even if you had a license, 9 times out of 10, you had a one car in the household. So, the man was, going off to work. So obviously he had the car. Insurance, just different, bills in the name, insurance, stuff like that. Most likely was, the as the main breadwinner was in both names, but mostly the husband's name.
Hmm.
You also had, like I said, back then there was no social media. Everything was what's in front of you. So, you know, a
Yeah.
lot of, even with neighbors, a lot of them, people stayed out of each other's business. So, even if you were getting beat on, there was no outlet outside of family. And like I said, there was no social media. Now everybody has it. Like basically now in 2024, you're looked at as, even like somebody less than or homeless has has some kind of smartphone, or there's always like a free
Hmm.
phone.
Yep.
So there's some kind of, media, there's some kind of outlet for everybody to, be heard or get a hold of people. Back then, let's say you got beat up by your husband and you escaped with your life, you had to run to a neighbor's house to use the phone. And you had to also, like I said, with not having phones, you had to memorize the number. So like
Yep.
if somebody changed their number or somebody's phone was disconnected, you were just out of luck unless you just, there was no GPS back then. There was no, different outlets of regards to technology that we have nowadays. So let's say your parents or your family lived across town, you had to like memorize how to get there. You had to, one, get the address. Two, you had to, find the money to get a taxi cab to get there. Obviously, with the husband having the car. So there's just different, you know, things that I think women had to go through back in the day. For those that are narcissistic, basically the man had all the control.
Yep. And then, you know what? I want to add to that. When we think about the woman being at home, the reality of it is nowadays, us women, we can take a little bit of control over our childbearing. Birth control didn't exist, wasn't approved by the FDA until 1960. So if you think about that, when I'm sure if not yourself, you know somebody that has a grandparent or great grandparent that has between 10 to 12 kids, or, the families were very large because every time the two got together, and in most cases, if the man ran the household, when that husband went to his wife and he said that he wanted some, guess what? She got pregnant, she kept it. There wasn't no conversation about what we doing. That makes it even more difficult for anybody to leave any type of abusive relationship because you have no say so. The women were really barefoot and home having birth, giving birth after this. Nowadays you really don't see huge families like that anymore. So and people look at it like, it was normal back then, but to me it was still a form of abuse. I don't believe any one person in a relationship should have that much control.
Awesome, awesome. And then also to piggyback off of that is that, you know, also the economical climate. Back then everything was, if you had a rich husband or if the man made a lot of money, you could afford to have 10 kids.
Mm,
Nowadays,
yep.
um, you know, being married with 2 kids is kind of like all right, we're done.
Hmm.
And that's also with two working incomes. And so, in your opinion, do you think that the kind of that women empowerment movement in regards to just independence and making more money, do you think that most men kind of feel some kind of way, some kind of resentment or kind of low-key hatred towards women because of that?
I don't think it's making a hatred towards women in general, but I think it's a crush to the male ego. But if you really think about it, and I'm a woman saying this, I believe that I don't think that it's right. And it's the same, it's nothing that's different. I'm a black female. It's nothing different than saying Black Lives Matter and running around all over the place saying Black Lives Matter. I'm black and I know my life matters. I know my life and everybody else's life matters. So I don't see the need in saying I'm a woman and I'm empowering and we're going to call this a movement. What's the difference between that, racism, sexism, or any of that? If you're going to empower women, I do it every day. So there's no need for me to run around and tell 1,000 people I empower women, because basically what that's saying, I'm empowering women and I'm not empowering men. That's just my thought on it.
Right. And I just think that, as society, we've kind of like got this false prefecture and false attitude of, men on one side and women on the other, when in reality we need each other.
Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
I would also say that, you know, just me personally, you know, I'm big on intelligence, and I just feel like having a independent, intelligent woman, especially when it comes to relationship and eventual marriage and, bearing kids, I just think that that's like a very good win. But I know that most men, most narcissistic men, And we're like, well, I can't control her. Well, she makes as much money as me or more than me, or, she's not doing what I'm saying. Um, and so I just think that's kind of just being a coward, as a man. You should want your women um, to be, strong. You want your women to be able to handle adversity. You want, um, everybody talks about like that Bonnie and Clyde ride or die type woman. And I always wanted a woman that can, if I get sick, she can hold the fort for a couple of days or a week while I'm
Mhm.
sick. You want a woman to compliment, as a man, you want a woman to compliment what you bring to the table. And I've said this before in other podcast episodes in regards to relationships, and that is you want when you're going into a relationship, everything you're doing when you're single, you want the significant other to enhance that, which means that if I'm dating a woman and let's say I'm dating a woman and she's does hair and nails. And then obviously, for those of you that don't know, that haven't viewed yet, I do own my own cooking and catering business as well outside of podcasting. And so, if I'm I am currently single. So, as I'm looking for a woman, to date and eventually marry, let's say she has her own hair and nail business. What I'm doing is supposed to supplement what she's doing. So it means we bring each other's strengths and weaknesses to the table and we become stronger as one. And I just think that, if you're listening uh, to the podcast here, you have to really think about that. And I'll challenge the viewers as well. Even if you're already in a relationship, do you communicate with your partner on goals, on what each other is bringing to the table? And I just am a firm believer of, if you're um you have to set your relationship on a great foundation. It's just like a tree. A tree seed gets planted and then it grows up and gets nurtured and becomes the big giant trees that we drive down the street by. And
Mhm.
so, if you're in a relationship and it's not built on a solid ground, it'll always fall. If it's built just on intimacy, it'll fall. If it's built on financial gain, it'll fall. If it's built on class or what your family said you should do. And just to not really get on a tangent, but just to speak on that, you are in control of your own life. And so, just because your mom or your parents or even your friends want you to date that person, if you're not feeling it, then you should do what's right for you. Don't let someone else's life or someone else's opinion influence what you do with your own life. Always take everything at a grain of salt.
Mhm. You said something that was so important. I actually did a podcast episode about that same thing when you said you would want to be with somebody that's got your back if you run into a situation. And you know what? I don't think that I think that it's a very really small number of men. Oh, I can't say that, but I don't think that every man thinks that way. I think that, it's based on who he has dated in the past and how he feels about himself. Because I'm single also, and a lot of men that I've run into is pretty much, I have to feel like I'm more financially secure than you. I've got to feel like I've got a really nice car. My home is bigger than yours. Um, the way I dress, and they don't realize that. And I hope that the men listening really grab something from this. When you portray yourself as being very financially stable and having plenty of money to burn, you are pushing that in front of yourself. And all that woman sees, even if you have an unattractive man riding in a really nice car, the first thing that she's going to see, excuse me, is that vehicle. You become secondary. So if you're portraying to a woman that I am really financially secure and I'm not really concerned on the money that you make, and if I got this, I'm good. then you're not putting yourself in a situation for her ever to look out for you or for her ever to be there for you financially, because you're entering a situation based on where you are and not where she is. And I find that men do that all the time. I had actually opting into at one point online dating, could not do it because every man wants to portray themselves as this image, and as soon as you get to know them, you're like, okay, all that was fake. Now, don't get me wrong. In dating, I do believe that you meet a representative at the beginning. But I think with women, it's a physical image, and men, it's a physical and it's a financial image. And you just like you mentioned that ride or die thing. I let anybody know up front that I'm dating. I'm not a ride or die because I have limits on what I'm going to ride with.
That's definitely a great thing you said there, especially again for those listening. She said, you know, the ride or die, Bonnie and Clyde. You have to, everybody has limitations. There's a line, I call it the faded line of life. There's a line that, everybody should have, when I say ride or die, I mean, to a certain extent, everybody should have that line where you're crossed. For me, just being a domestic violence survivor, if you get to the point where you got to hit, you get hit. If you're a woman out there, if you get hit, go, leave, bye, like
Hmm.
figure it out. Same thing with certain things are said. If you have a parent that's died and you're getting in a verbal altercation with your significant other and they mention ill will regarding a dead family member or that parent, that's also a red flag, or and that's like a
Hmm.
crossing the line. There's certain things you just can't do as humans. Everything that we do as humans, has a negative or positive reaction. And so you have to deal with the consequences of your own actions. And so, with that being said, also, I feel like, just as a man, just with friends and general, and just I'm big on studying men, studying manipulation and psychology. Um, a lot of men, we have a pick me mentality, and you have to, one of the um, you have to understand that women, they're always going to have the psychological advantage. That's just how, it was created. And so they're going to use what we call, men and women use what we call mirroring and manipulation. And what that means is taking the traits of someone or something that you
Hmm.
think that the person you're trying to get likes and mirroring that image. So, social media, in 2024, social media has become a thirst trap for that, because if you're viewing this, I want you to understand that if you're single, everything you post on social media, the people are watching. And so if you're like, hey, I want a man that, loves to buy me flowers. If I want a man that listens to Drake and, Lil Wayne, you know, depending on the type of man you're trying to date, they're going to look at those posts and be like, okay, first date, I gotta bring flowers. When I'm, let's say as a gentleman, there's different types of dates. Some of us meet at the restaurant or meet at the location together. Some people, if you're comfortable, depending on how long you've known someone, it could be somebody you've been friends with and known a while that you decide to go on a date with. The man might, pick the woman up. You might say, hey, I'm gonna play all Drake's best songs in my car while we're on the way to the place. And what that creates is a false sense of realization, and the women or the you end up disappointed in the end. And so I always say, one of my advice just with dating is lead with who you are first, and everything else is a supplement. And so um, here's a tip I use. And so I I mirror what you one get to know the woman you're dating before you go on a date. That's my first tip. My second tip is I mirror what the expectation of the woman has for herself. And so, reason I say this in my early dating, early teenage years, when I say that, I mean like ages 17 to 23, I would say that 6 year window. Um, I was always labeled back then as a nice guy. And so I always, I took him to the fancy restaurants, this is before I lived by myself. You had extra money living with your parents, and this is before I had kids. And so, but I had a nice car. I had a 2002 Pontiac Grand Am Sports Series, two
Wow.
doors, turbo. And so, obviously living at home, no kids, paying $300 in rent. I had, excessive, funds to be able to go to those fancy restaurants. One of the manipulations of women, listen to what the woman says when you're speaking to them. One of my situations, I had a woman that, I'll leave names out obviously, but I had a woman that had never been on a date before in regards to a nice restaurant. Like I think the nicest date she had been on that she told me was like Applebee's. And so I took her to like a really nice fancy restaurant. And the problem with that is you have to allow time. And when I say that is you don't want to lead, this is a first date especially, you don't want to lead with the financial. And so I always say meet people where they're at, but also, you have to have your standards as well. And so, um, if your standard is a fancy fine dining experience and the other person is cool with, TGI Fridays and Applebee's, go to TGI, meet people where they're at, and then as you're discussing, you can grow into um matching each other's standards. And so what I mean by that is that, you don't have to ball out on the first date. Um,
Mhm.
I always had a rule where I would always pay for the first date. And so you also want to gauge interest of what the for me is obviously with women, you want to gauge their interest. So like, when you're getting to know a woman and she says, "Hey, I really love art," go to an art museum. I actually love art myself, but even if you also, be open because everything, in any relationship, you're not going to like everything your spouse does or your significant other, and they're not going to like everything that you do. But you also have to, relationships are about certain compromises. And so,
Mhm.
if they say, hey, they like art, and let's say you like fine dining, you don't have to take them to a Roof Chris or a fancy $200 steakhouse the first date. Hey, maybe go to a free art museum, um, and get some ice cream afterwards. Do something simple. Get to actually know each other, and then as the relationship progresses, then maybe if it's your 1 year anniversary, hey, let's go to that fancy dinner that I
Mhm.
want to take you to. That way, you've already established, the relationship, and it's appreciative. You always want to, you know, like I said, lead with your personality, and like I said, everything else is a supplemental benefit. So, I don't even lead with money. When I'm dating, um, lead with your heart. Lead with, you know, and also watch for those red flags. One thing that two things that I love about women is one, I'm an intelligence person, and two, I'm big on morals and class, appreciation. I'm like I said, I'm a private chef, and own a cooking business. So, I might, I always ask a woman, what's their favorite food and dessert. When I'm looking at dating, just so I know in the back of my head, one day I might make her that dessert from scratch. And then, I want to, as I'm, learning about her, I want to gauge her appreciation. And so, um, and so Diamond, in your dating experience, what are some red flags that you see from men in regards of the first date or like that initial dating process?
Okay, so first, but I'm going to speak about you said something that was earlier that was important, and I really think that when men don't women, excuse me, women don't think that men do this. When you spoke about social media, a young lady that I knew know she was telling me about a guy that she's interested in, and she really wants a relationship, a serious relationship. Well, she and I both are Facebook friends, and she puts on Facebook a lot. Oh, what is a girl to do when she wants some, and you know, just kind of vulgar stuff that does not show who she really is. And I don't know if I overstepped myself, but I said something to her because she talked to me about what she wants. So I said, well, you got to be careful what you put on social media because people don't really know you. They are put whatever you put on there is what they're taking to be an invite into letting them know who you really are. And she said, "Well, no, it's just social media." I said, "It's just social media to you." I said, if that wasn't the case, you know, like even for my career, I don't put certain stuff on Facebook because I know that it's against my policy. It's something I'm not supposed to do. If it didn't mean anything, these things would not be put into place. So I tell her, I said, carry yourself a little bit different so that he can let him see you the way I see you. The female that wants to settle down, is willing to be submissive if she finds the right man, um is tired of carrying everything on her own. Don't put on there, well, when a girl wants to, because a man is going to see what he wants to see. Men are, not to say imaginary, but they go by image, they go by what they see. And you're a man, I'm sure you understand what I mean when I say that. So when you put something on Facebook to get his attention, you're not just getting his attention to look at your post. He's getting an internal thought on what you would be like and what it would be like for y'all to spend time with each other, just the two of you. And going back to your question, for me, some of the red flags immediately, which I had to learn because I dealt with a narcissist for a few years, is a man that is too eager to want to be everything I want him to be too fast. If he's asking too many questions, when you first get to know a person, you want to know the basics: their name, what they like to do, if they have children, what kind of work they do, where they live. If I meet you and the first conversation, whether it be on the phone or face to face, and your first conversation with me is, how long was my last relationship? What do I like in a man? Just getting too deep into my life sexually. What do you like the best? Just getting too deep, that is a red flag, because my question is, if you're planning on being here for the long haul, why you want to know so many intimate details about my life so fast? You know, a really big red flag is, if I'm the kind of female that if I'm taking out on a date, the next time it's on me. I'm planning everything because, just a lot of times people forget that just like women are used, men are used too. So sometimes you have to open your mind up and say, I'm not going to allow him to just treat me good, treat me good. I need to give him back too because I don't know what his past is. So I would do those things, but if everything, if it, I don't like a man that's too showy. And for those that don't understand what that means, if you're the kind of person that, you have to have the fastest car, you've got to have all the extra toys, and, you've got a whole bunch of jewelry on, or I don't like that, because to me, you're dressing up something that you're hiding. And to be totally honest, I have a small business, so I sell jewelry as, as like my, my side job. And I wear a lot of jewelry. Normally it's tasteful, but I just don't like that in a man. I think that's a woman's place. A woman is supposed to be more feminine and, I guess more expressive with jewelry. But me personally, a red flag is a man that's too showy, because he's hiding something. He's dressing up something.
Right, right. I definitely understand that. As those some really good red flags as well. And you said one thing that, goes back to what I was speaking on about appreciation. My thing was, my advice was, the first date was always on me, but I have had several encounters where the woman was like, "Hey, I got the tip," or "Hey, next date, I'm like you said, next date I'm planning it," or next time we go to next time we go out to dinner, I got it. Even with my best friend, me and her still do that to this day. Like, I think I took her out on her birthday and paid, and then um, she's like, "Hey, next time we go, I got it." And so you always want to have that commonality with not only relationships and intimate partners, but your friends as well.
Hmm.
Um, Even with it's just a good relationship trait in regards to friendships, platonically, and um,
Oh.
relationships. You want to, even with buddies, when we go out to bars, or I first round's on me. Next time I got you on your beer. So you
Mhm.
just always want to have that.
And you know what? I'm gonna add to it. I don't know how I forgot this, and I just a few hours ago posted something about it, but a man that wants to talk about sex too fast is the biggest red flag. Oftentimes, if we talk about it too early, you probably won't, because I will ghost you. I'm not going to waste your time, and I'm not going to waste my time. If I see there's a red flag there, and I see that you're adamant about it, normally I'm gonna give you an idea that I might say, well, we talking about that already, or something to that effect, to let you know that, okay, you know what, you're doing too much. But if you keep going with it, then I'm just gonna have to leave you alone. I can't raise somebody. I can't change a person's ways. And a lot of times, us women will think that because we are attractive, that we can change a man. You cannot change a person off of the way you look. They have to want to change.
Oh, that's a great point. Like I said, I always say only person that can change is themselves when they partner with God. And so
Hmm.
that's like I said, that's a good one. I do want to drop a nugget because you just said something. And if you're a woman viewing, I want you to listen up because this is what I call free game. And this is, like I said, I won't talk too much about my intimate past, if you will, but whenever, like you said, it goes into the social media thing when you said when females, women post vulgar things.
Hmm.
As a man, like I said, we look at that. There's different, every man's in a different season of his life. For the most part, unless you're a super narcissistic man, I feel like every single man wants to eventually find, even though some people say, oh, marriage is just a piece of paper, it's not even about the union of marriage. Every man, that is, every straight man wants to find a woman that um is, for them. Everybody wants to find that. I don't care what nobody says. Everybody wants to wake up in the morning to a beautiful woman. They say every straight man wants to wake up in the morning to a beautiful, intelligent, loving woman that's for them, that fits their personality. You know, it's like I said when you were talking earlier in the podcast on men's pride. Pride come before the fall, but ego, pride are normally naturally the same thing. But
Hmm.
there's no better feeling as a man to know, one, that's my woman, and two, she's faithful, and that's me. That's very, very encouraging. Very instills a lot of confidence for a man to be able to look and say, hey, you know, that's my girl, and it's when you wake up, when you brush your teeth, if your woman, let's say your woman gets a promotion at the job, and she posted on Facebook, like, ooh, I just got an award, you're like, that's my baby, even when you're talking to family members as a man, when I'm talking to my mom, obviously I'm single now, but I know I have confidence I'll get to that point to be able to, that's as a man. I want to talk to the viewers for a second. As a man, like I said, I'm a big mama's boy. Obviously, just through my domestic history, surviving background. Um, but as a man, to go to and obviously if the grandma's still living too, as a man, we have certain women in our life that, whether it's mom, grandma, aunt, um, it could be a mentor. There's certain women in our life, you know, especially if I'll speak from a motherhood, you know, I want to give the women, I want to give a women a little nugget of wisdom here, that are viewing. Men, we always talk to our mom about women. So like I said, if you're dating a guy or you're seeing a guy, he's talking to his mom about you. My mom personally, you know, if I'm talking to a woman and I'm dating a woman, I'll be like, hey, I'm going on a date with so and so, and one mom, the mom, especially I'm the only son, so a mama's boy, they gonna ask all them questions, who is she, where's she from, she got any kids, what are her goals in life, though, those deeper questions, and like I said,
You there? Hello.
So like I was saying, one of the nuggets that I do want to give women, like I said, men, we always talk to our mothers or the women that we hold dear and near to our life, whether it be women, whether it be mothers, grandmothers, etc. And so, one nugget I want to give you is that, carry yourself with respect. My mom, she'll even, if we're already dating for a while, or, you know, if we've already kind of, established that we're together, my mom even looks at the woman. It's funny, but my mom will even research the woman on Facebook, just to, just to see. And you won't even. It's not like a stalker thing or anything. It's literally she'll just look at the couple picture. She'll look at the profile picture and a couple posts, and she'll make her judgment then. And so I just want the women to know that are listening in that we as men, there's no prouder feeling to being able to go to our mothers, go to our grandmothers, go to the women that we have high respect for in our life to say, Mom, her name's Emily or whoever her name is, and that's my woman, that's me. That's so much confidence that is it instills as a man that they can say that. And the last part I do want to say is that, and she's faithful. That's my woman. That's the best feeling in the world to say that's my woman. And as a woman, as a man, we want a woman that not necessarily, some people try to say that some women are have attitudes or too headstrong, or they call it bitter, but like strong personality. To me, I want a woman that can tell a guy, nope, I got a man. Nope. If you send them a message and it's vulgar, if it ain't on business, I'm blocking you ASAP and I'm telling my man about it. That's it's me personally. That's the kind of one. I don't want a sneaky woman that got a bunch of dudes in the DMs. Hey, because like you said, you want to allow that space. So like I said, I'm not into looking at a woman's phone or looking at who's liking her social media. That's doing too much. That's narcissistic. But I should be able to trust my woman to put the foot down when she got to put the foot down. But like I was saying, the other nugget that I want to give all women, and like Diamond was saying when she was discussing her in regards to talking about sex too early, what I want to say is, from a male's perspective, like I said, one, we look at the social media post. Like I said, if I see one, it's off-putting for me if I see a woman that's too vulgar on social media, because to me personally, that's just disgusting, because there's so many different, like there could be different predators. There's just different people on social media that you don't know who you're allowing access to. Mm-hmm. And then also, here's a little key for all women. If we talk about sex too early, that's all we want. And I just wanted to put that out there. Like, you're not gonna get married. Like, we're not getting married to you. Like, any relationship is wraps, unless somehow you get pregnant and we say, hey, obviously as a real man, we're not gonna leave. That's really the only way. So like, if I hit, if as a man, if we slide the DMs like, hey, what you got going on tonight, you trying to do the yada yada whoop the whoop, that's all it's ever gonna be. It's gonna be a fling, it's gonna be a casual thing, and that is all it'll ever be. Unless like I said, I have had instances where something started out casual and the feelings developed later on, but that's very rare. But yeah, if a man's just talking about sexual pleasure and intimacy right out the gate, one, it's a test. Sometimes it can be a test to see a woman's character, but 9 times out of 10, it's just trying to see how fast we can, get the deed done and move on. And so that's just a little tip.
I have issues with that, because I feel like it's easy for a man to do that. And I did an episode about that. That's such a double standard. Why is it that a man can do that and he's just looked at as being a man, and when a woman does that, she's looked at as being a hoe, or she's just in the other? Why can't she just be doing the same thing? Because this is the thing that I don't think a lot of men realize. Just like when we are children and we're raised up in a certain environment, the belief is we are a product of our environment. Well, when a man decides that he wants to reach out to a woman just to be intimate with her, what he's doing is he's breeding, because you don't know how many men came before you with the intent to do the same thing. So what you're doing is you're now breeding a different kind of woman. Whereas you may meet a woman and say, you know what? A woman may start off in the whole dating field and say, you know what, I'm a date. She runs across every man that she runs across. The first thing he's talking about is intimacy and what he wants to do to her and this and the other. After a certain amount of men approach her the same way, she is now a product of that environment. And she's either going to do one of the two things. She's going to decide that she's going to be the one to hit men up only for what she wants, or she's going to give in to what these men want. But she's going to turn into one or the other. She's going to be either angry about the fact that men only see her sexually, or she's going to give into it. And that's what I don't think a lot of men realize. I don't think they realize that when you go around treating women this way, and I'm not even going to get into the whole fact that, and 9 times out of 10, if you're an African American male, you're doing the same thing to your African American women, and you're breeding a different kind of African American woman that ends up in turn being the mother of your African American babies. That creates another generation of hurt women. And we often talk about narcissism. That's where it comes from. It comes from having those maternal or paternal issues of where they create this inflated image. So when people think about doing, that's why I'm a person that had to learn a lot about the psyche of a male and the psyche of a female. And the reason why I did that, one is because of my career, but the other reason I had to do that is because when you want to stop the madness that we see today, you have to first look where it comes from. And it comes from treatment. Just like I was talking to you about a female that I know, when I asked her and got into a deep conversation with her about why, because I'm the kind of woman that I'm not interested, and I will not date a man that's married. I've done it before years ago, and I'm not interested in it, not even a little bit. I'm not interested in how you look or anything. I just don't want it. And when I talked to her about the same thing, because a lot of the men that were approaching her were married, and I gave her the knowledge that I had about it, and how I don't care how long it lasts, you're either going to get what you get out of it, what you got out of it from the very beginning, or you're going to be hurt at the end. Okay. And when I started to talk to her and explain to her, she started to say, well, a lot of these men aren't out here. They're not looking to date. They're looking for somebody to sleep with. So I said, well, sounds like you have a choice to make. You're either going to get with what they want, or you're going to wait for something that's different. And that's just my thought on that.
All right, like I said, that opens up, like I said, into our next topic. What I want to talk about is, dating in the Black community, because I think, Monique said something to me. And she said something in the Uncle Shannon Sharp. I call him Uncle Shannon. And in the podcast a few days ago about dating in Black America, and I know obviously her husband's her manager, etc. But I know she was talking about how Tyler Perry would only meet with her personally, and how she was distasted at the fact that society, specifically other like-minded, African American people in the community, were kind of like off taken by the fact that she would want her husband to be there supporting her, standing side by side. And so that's one thing I want to talk about. How do you feel? Because like I said, there's many different ways you could go about it, but I just feel like society tries to demonize the power of a Black couple, and throws, like, for a man, me personally, I think that society tries to put different avenues of other type women advertises other races, other types of women to deter us from our own kind. And I think it's been going on for years. And so, what is your thought on, the demonization and the scrutiny of, being with each other, if you will?
This is what I think. I'm sorry, my dog is in the background. I think that, number one, speaking about Monique, I don't know her personally, but I will say that from what I've noticed, well, first I'm going to say this. She's an older woman that I believe she is in her second or third marriage. Because she talked about her relationship with her husband now and how he watched her in her marriage, and she watched him date. Okay. I think that because she's a woman, an older woman that is now married, and I believe that, I think she spoke really highly of her marriage now. What I find is a lot of times when a woman is talking really highly of her marriage, it's because she really wants it to work. The reality of it is, if you are deeply loved, I don't have to tell the world about it. Me and my man, we know it. So there's no need for me to broadcast how much better he's made my life. And I think that there is a little bit of manipulation maybe going on in that marriage, and this is my opinion based on what I see on the outside. I don't know her personally or him personally, but if you have to go to every meeting and do everything with your husband as your manager, to me that's leaving a little bit of that's not leaving any space for the relationship to grow, because he's with you personally and he's with you as far as being a manager. You are grown, you're an older woman. I don't believe that she needs that. I also, and another reason why I said that is, I don't know if you listened to the end part of the interview, but she talked about being a hoe. She talked about, how her and her husband laughed about it. And he said, well, no, you just had happy coochie or something like that, because she had been with a lot of other men. So maybe the reason why he's tagging along as being a manager is to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So personally, I feel like that, to me, there's a little something else going on. And the fact that she was so eager to tell Tyler Perry, even when, she asked Shannon Sharpe, what would you do if your family lost out on so much money and somebody owed you money? What would you want? And she clearly said, I would want my money back. So to me, you have this wonderful relationship. If it was me, and I'm not in that situation, but I would say to myself, I'm in a wonderful relationship. Yes, they did me wrong, but there's nothing I can do to get that back. I'm going to be happy in my relationship and aim to gain every coin that I lost back. I'm not going to get on here and downplay. And just like you said, relationships in a Black culture, an intimate relationship, but let's talk about even the relationship between her and Tyler Perry. You didn't do anything different from extortion. You basically got on this show, you downplayed Tyler Perry, you downplayed Oprah, and you told either one, well, I believe it was Tyler Perry, she said the only way that he could make it better is to give her what he owed. You extorted this man, and you didn't do it through saying, you're going to give me money. You're telling me you owe me this money, and I'm going to put all your business on blast until you do it. How could you possibly care so much about the Black community when you just did that? So I hope I answered your question. That was a really big interview for me.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely understand that. And so with that being said, in the Black community, I also feel that, like, just outside of Monique, just in general, the Black community, I feel like, what's your take on the whole, Black women are bitter, or the men that say, I can't only date white women, or I only can date outside my race because Black women are just too bitter or too much or too independent. What's your take on that?
I recently, actually, I think a few days ago, did a podcast about a gentleman that he passed away named Kevin Samuels, that was on YouTube, and he talked a lot about black women being bitter and how black women had too high standards, and I think in all reality, some of us are, and to some extent, we all have a little bit of bitterness in us. And the reason why I say that is because when you think about the number, excuse me, the number of black women that are raising children alone, not because, um, you know, one of our spouse, the spouse passed away or anything like that, or is even incarcerated, but by choice, two people that could not get along to raise a child, or they just didn't want to be together, one person kept cheating. If you think about the amount of women that are raising children alone, that would be enough to be to be bitter, because the reality of it is, who wants to be a statistic? I'm a statistic and I'm not happy about it. Have I taken my bitterness and turned the lemons of bitterness into lemonade? Absolutely. Absolutely. Being college educated, a single mother, owning my own home, and having a long lasting career. Absolutely. Do I have bitterness about the reality that the majority of my, I guess, great years was raising a child on my own? Absolutely. Did I allow that bitterness to stop me? No. Does that bitterness stop me from dating, moving forward? No. But I will be honest and whoever I'm dating and say, you know what? Yeah, I am bitter about the reality that I had to raise a child by myself, and I had to make plenty of sacrifices. Yes, I have bitterness about it. But when I'm telling you that I'm bitter about something, then your job is, because when a person is first able to admit their issue, then I'm okay with you saying to me, you showing the bitterness. Because now I already know that it's there. It's your job to pull it out of me and say, okay, you're being bitter about this situation. And then I can make a change. The problem in the black community is when a man, and I'll just say a black man, runs into a black woman that is bitter, and she has not yet realized she is bitter, and that man is trying to tell her something about herself that she does not know. He is talking to a brick wall. Going back to the Monique interview, there was a part in the interview that I thought that any woman that is listening, I would suggest her listen to this. And I think that the men should listen to it just as well. She spoke about, I don't know if they had just got married or they were dating. And she said she went to the table and she would always sit at the head of the table. She said she did it all the time. And if even like myself, I've been single for a while now, so there are things that I do that I may not realize that I'm doing. So I identified when she said this, but she said that she sat at the head of the table, and she said one day she sat on the side and her husband sat at the head of the table. She said that we didn't have any conversation. It wasn't an argument. He never said anything to her. That right there was so important, because he realized that she was in a pattern of behavior. They had conversations, because she said that he told her, you're just wild. You running around, you're saying anything, and they don't even hear you because of the way they're paying attention to your actions. So he talked to her about something that she already knew about herself. And then she was able to submit and make changes on her own. There wasn't any pressure. There was an argument. He was not pushing her masculinity onto her. And I believe that a lot of men are doing that. They come into these relationships, especially with a single mother. You cannot move the same way that you would move with a woman that does not have children. Because a woman that does not have children is more eager to be in a relationship, maybe sometimes that is not as healthy as she needs it to be. A woman that has children knows a little bit more about relationships. Even if she wasn't dating or in a strong relationship with the person that she had children with, she knows how important it is to know the person that you're dealing with. So I think that men have to really understand that you pushing your masculinity on a woman and telling a woman, I'm the man, I'm the head of the household, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do that. You're putting her back into a chain and a reminder of bitterness. In other words, bing, this is the reason why I'm bitter, because men act like this. If a man leads and shows her that he cares about her, that woman will naturally, even surprisingly, submit. And that is the issue in the black community. We don't realize that when we're dealing with somebody, like I had a friend of mine that was dealing with a female that had been through all types of different types of abuse, and she was giving him so many problems. And I said, well, when you date somebody that has had these types of issues or any types of issues, they are a product of the environment. They are the person with these issues. They bring them issues into that relationship. So you need to figure out what these issues are and figure out whether you're going to be able to work with them.
Awesome, awesome. And so, what are some tips that you would give people that are navigating, what, like, let's say, like, into the Monique situation, how would, what are some tips that you would give men to deal with a woman that is, one, on the one side knows that she's bitter, and how do you what are some tips to help her work through it? And two, what would you advise men to do that are dating a woman that has no recollection or no knowledge or awareness of her bitterness?
First, I would say that any man that's dating a woman, period, is when you come into that situation, walk into it knowing what you want, not what to expect, not what you're hoping for, what you think she's like, what you want. Because when you meet when you meet a woman that's bitter and you already know what you want, when she starts showing signs of bitterness, you already know whether you can handle that or not. You know what myself, after dating and doing it for a little while, I know exactly what I want. I know what I don't want. I know what I can handle. I know what I can't handle. And it's good to learn that. And sometimes it comes with time. I tell anybody, especially a man, if you are looking to be with a woman and you know what you want, spend that time alone to see what's out there. Don't get into a woman's life and, like a lot of men do, tell them you love her, you want to be with her, you want to settle down and all this stuff. Go out there, see if the grass is greener. Date a little bit, see what's out there. And then when you get with that person and you know what you want, you're more prone to be a little bit more understanding for her bitterness. You have a little bit more patience. Just like for a woman or even a man, you don't really know what true patience is like until you have children. Because those children are going to talk too much. They are going to get on your nerves. They're going to always want something. They're going to not credit you based on everything you've done. They're going to do all these things and you still have to love them. Okay, so I think that man needs to know what he wants before he dates her. And if she does have bitterness and she does not know that she's bitter, I'm a black woman. I've been to therapy and I'm a strong believer in therapy. You can tell when there's something not right based on your relationship with others. And I'm not just talking about an intimate relationship. Your relationship with your family, your relationship with your friends, your relationship with coworkers. There's going to be some things that are going to be just alike in there that's going to show you and tell you what your true personality is. And if it's not the way you want to be, sit down and talk to a professional. And I'm not talking about your good girlfriend or, even, I'm a podcaster. Podcasting for me is therapeutic, but that's not the only way that I learned how to deal with my issues is through podcasting. So I think that any woman that doesn't know that she's bitter and she's looking to date, start paying attention to your relationship with others. If you fall out with everybody, if you're quick to throw somebody to the curb, if you with this person and the first thing they do is get on your nerve, you're out, you're gone. You need to sit down and talk to somebody and let them tell you what the issues are. And a therapist is not just going to tell you what your issues may be. They're going to tell you, a good one is going to tell you how to work through them. They're going to give you strategies of working through them.
Some awesome those, some definitely some great tips. For those of you viewing and listening out there, one thing she said that I've been saying on almost every episode of my podcast is that is seek higher counsel. Like I said, you attract what you want. You know, if you want a healthy marriage, you need to find network with people and have people in your circle that have successful marriages. You know, like I said, seek higher counsel. Um, you know, study the mindset of what you want to manifest in your own life.
Now,
Um,
let me just say this though, because I you said it and I should have said it. I'm a firm believer in God. God has gotten me through some horrible times, and I'm a firm believer in God. And before you do seek therapy, you have to go to the ultimate high that's going to let you know what, I can fix these issues. I can talk to you in your heart and let you know what it is that you need to do and how you need to do it. And then you have to pray and wait for things to manifest, because they definitely will. And sometimes you either have that time or you don't. But ultimately, that's who you would go to.
Awesome. And then one last thing, or a couple last closing remarks and benediction. You know, what would you say to the men that, you know, say, hey, I'm only going to date outside of my race? Because, you know, what would you say those that feel like they um, don't, you know, that black women just aren't for them?
First, I'm going to say this. I'm originally from New York, and I'm currently living in the South, and I've been here for some time now. And one of the things that I've experienced is, people would always say, oh, well, I know, you're like this because you're a northerner. And I would always say, how can you generate one idea off of a whole region of people? I don't represent everybody in the North. I represent me. So in saying that, I would say to any man that is interested in just dating somebody outside of their own race, everybody is not the same. And to me, there's a heartbreak in there that has not been healed, because I've dated black men that have hurt me to the core. I don't hate black men. And I'm not looking to date only outside of my race. If it happens, it happens. But I'm not just looking to do that, because that is taking the pain that one or maybe two or maybe three people have done and putting it on a whole race of people. We're not even going to say a whole race, a whole culture, because when you say black, you could be talking about a black person that's from, some part of the country that black people are in. It just, that can be Africans, or you could be saying, anybody, pretty much. You're taking a whole culture of people. You're taking different age ranges and saying everybody that looks like this, no. So you're limiting yourself. Now, sometimes if you're looking to date a certain kind, because, the reality of it is every culture has different kinds of people in that culture, then you need to place yourself in environments of where you can meet the black person that suits the kind of person that you want. But to say, you only want to date outside of your race, you have gone from being a love of your race to a hate for your race. And that could be racist. Because the reality is we have people that, I see it all the time on the shows where I'm black, but I don't like myself because I'm, and it's because something happened that we have not healed from.
Awesome. And so closing out here, what are what are just some natural tips that you could give to the viewers, both men and women alike, on dating and, finding that, partner of their dreams?
Well, I'm still single, so I can't give maybe successful tips. All I can give is my own tips. Just stop looking. Stop looking. It's like stop looking, but get out. That's one of the things that I had to tell myself is, between work and podcasting and my business, sometimes I find myself on the computer or in my phone a lot and kind of like not thinking about the world. Now, with even like, the holidays and stuff coming up, you say to yourself, well, what do I need to do differently? Well, sometimes you have to stop looking, let God, and get out. Because what's for you is going to happen. I was looking at in one of the groups on Facebook, and one of the ladies put, is anybody looking to date through podcasting? And I said, wow, why would somebody do podcasting just to find someone to date? The reality of it is, this person that you're looking to date is speaking to several men and women all through the day, which allows an opportunity to meet somebody else just like you. So, why not get out? Learn to go out to lunch. And if you go to lunch and you don't have anybody to go to lunch by yourself. Go out and go shopping by yourself. If you have any water, one of the things that I like to do is I like to go sit in the park, and I've done it plenty of times alone. You just never know where you'll run into that person that's for you. But I definitely would tell them, stop looking.
Awesome. And like you said, you've had a lot of great wisdom, a lot of great talking points here today on the Creative Dominion podcast. And so, like I said, this episode will be available Monday at midnight for all the viewers to listen to this bonus episode on dating within the Black community, and the material and the experience of being, Black and single parenting in the community. And so I appreciate everybody listening and tuning in, and hope you guys have a great night.